Hahnemann said that we all have a higher purpose of existence, and homeopathy helps us attain that higher purpose of existence. What is the higher purpose of existence for you?
The higher purpose of existence. Well, it's not for me to say, but anyhow, I can say a few things, because I feel. You see, I have announced many years ago that I will write, the final book I will write will be the meaning and the purpose of diseases. What is the meaning of diseases and what is the purpose of diseases and the suffering? And this connects with your question, because I felt that humans, or the first humans, were people who had the connection with what is called the divine or the God, or constant connection. And they were living in a very blissful state, in a very happy state, full of energy and full of completeness inside. So there was a time when this was ruptured because of some actions on the humans, and they lost the connection. And after that, all that we try to do is to find again the connection. So some, they find it, as I have said many times, in a love affair which is quite, how can I say, a love affair which one feels that completes the other. Such a love affair gives the feeling of paradise in the two people who are involved. Yes. But most of the people still have lost this possibility to find the exact counterpart that will fit and will give them the feeling of being in paradise. Yes. So therefore, the next thing that they have to do out of the suffering they go through is to find out finally this connection, one way or another. But until they find this connection again, and this feeling that is generated from this connection, which is a feeling of total love, total bliss, total happiness, where you feel nothing is missing. You are a complete human being when you are in connection. So the people will go through a lot of suffering before they can end up finding this connection. And a lot of, how can I say, people have to suffer a lot. Why is this? I don't know. But this is my experience.
Indian philosophy says that people themselves are the reason for their own suffering.
Well, you can say this. Yes.
If they are able to identify who they really are,
yes,
then all suffering will vanish.
Sure.
We are all living in a world of delusion.
Yes, correct.
But still, the people who are very scientifically minded, they will still say that, what about the theory of evolution? What about the Neanderthal man? All the species from which human beings have evolved, the apes, which have evolved to Homo sapiens. If the theory of evolution is right, then how do we explain this feeling that there was a time when human beings had a higher spiritual connection, higher spiritual awareness?
You see, I feel that the humanity as it exists today has taken the wrong turn. You see, technical civilization has exploded. Spiritual inner evolution has diminished. So that gave a direction to humanity, which is totally wrong at this moment. We call it scientific society and all this nonsense. What is scientific? What is science and scientific? It is a matter of great question. What is really? What do they mean by a scientific? By scientific, they mean only if this is a black box and I see it's a black box and I can see it, then that's scientific. But nobody can tell me how this box transmits something which is immaterial, something which is waves,
Energy.
and how came my energy, how from a sperm and an ovum coming together, I became
Me.
this me. Yes. How do they explain this? So the what we call scientific way of thinking is a very superficial way of looking upon life. We should change completely, I think, our structure and our concept of what is valid and what is superficial.
Now, that brings me to two separate thoughts and questions. One, I feel that the homeopaths who are doing polypharmacy, complexes, therapeutics, they are not spiritually evolved enough to understand the true depth of homeopathy. They are stuck into the material scientific world. So from that point of view, the material thought is not good for them. But on the other hand, today we are trying to understand homeopathy in scientific terms, trying to understand what our potencies are, what happens during the process of succussion and trituration. We are trying to prove our potencies through nuclear magnetic resonance, different forms of spectroscopy, different kinds of blind, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials. We are trying to find out, differentiate one drug from another drug, one remedy from another remedy in different potencies. This is totally a material science. So, is this good or not?
You see, from one side, it's good because the world wants to see the proof. What is this that you give at 10M potency, where nothing exists but energy, as you call it, etc., etc. The problem is that this is asked by a society, by a world which is turned totally materialistic. They don't realize the value of energy. They don't realize the source of energy, and they don't realize most of it. They don't realize the love which flows in an individual who is really outside of this scientific frame of mind. An old man of a village can give you an advice which is much more concrete and much more useful than a scientist who will advise you on an issue. You see, all American people, almost all, they have what they call a psychiatrist to ask advice. Most of them, what they say, your wife bothers you, send away your wife. Your mother bothers you, send away your mother. Be free, be yourself, be blah, blah, blah. What they are saying is, forget about love, forget about positive emotions, forget about what gives you pleasure really. Concentrate on what is ephemeral, pleasurable condition. And in this way, we have created this kind of society which leads us away from anything that is spiritual in us. People say, what is spiritual? What do you bother? But when we see the patients, we see they are suffering tremendously. And what bothers them is actually this lack of spiritual connection. It's bothering them, the feeling that they feel incomplete, they feel out of touch, they feel alone, they feel loneliness, they feel depression, they feel anxiety. Because the love that should be there to connect with the others and to take away all these negative feelings is not there anymore. Now they come to the position, they say, oh, we are scientists, will find a way to do what? To take away your depression. Yes, but you give me a drug to take away my depression. But at the same time, I go into an anxiety state which is worse than the depression. So what is the good of the taking remedies, taking drugs that will close one problem I have and will create another? What is the good of that? It's a vicious circle. So I don't want that. And until the world realizes the vicious circle of that kind of materialistic attitude, low potencies in homeopathy, you see, the equivalent is low potencies in homeopathy, because low potencies will act in everyone, yes, of course, but will close down, will suppress rather than cure. Sometimes it cures, of course, because between 30 remedies you gave, there is one which is really the minimum, and people, they feel freed, etc. But this is not happening frequently. This is happening very few times.
Long back, probably 20 years back, in an interview in India, you said that you believe that in future homeopathic remedies will be given in the forms of waves, probably through machines.
Yes. Yeah, that's a big story, because when I was in California, I was teaching there, I was receiving an invitation from the National Institute of Health, from a group where they were dealing with this issue. They were trying to find a box in which you enter, they give you the right wavelength that your organism needs, and you will be cured. So they called me. At the moment, I did not know why they were calling me, but I was so exhausted. They said, come as you go back to Greece, pass from the National Institute of Health, and the group was ready to hear my ideas about this. So I said, no, I cannot come because I'm exhausted. So they sent somebody in Athens to interview me. And we discussed this matter. And what I said is, that if you try to do this, you will find the great problems with the wavelengths of all kinds of things which happen in Earth. And it will be very difficult to isolate what is the wavelength of the particular organism you are examining. Therefore, you have to isolate all other influences in order to record exactly the wavelength of that particular organism. So you can give it back from the outside with a machine, you give the wavelength of that particular person. Because the wave you will record will be always mixed with the wavelengths of the Earth, of the satellites, of that
of the whole cosmos.
Yeah, of the whole cosmos. So how can you isolate? So we had long discussion, and I believe this idea was given up by the Institute of Health during that time. I'm talking about 83, 84, around 85, around that time.
You gave that interview in 1994.
94, you see. Yes. So I have said several things. I have said in Chile, I have said that if we knew the conditions or the symptoms that could be created by the 94 elements of the periodic table,
yes,
we could, with all that alone, cure everybody. But if we prove properly,
yes,
and if we have done the proper job, then maybe one day we'll reduce the necessary remedies, because now we're using 2,000 remedies, okay? But that was an idea. I just threw this idea, and one student of mine took the idea and made a school out of it, with imagining what certain element could produce as a proving. So that caused rather pain and confusion. Like the same way when I said about the giving back the wavelength which the organism needs, created a kind of confusion, because many people thought they could do that quite easily.
Yeah, there are many people doing it through Vega machines,
Yes.
pendulums,
Yes, yes,
pressure points, muscle testing.
yes.
So, and they feel that they are able to find the simillimum using these methods. Do you feel that it is possible to identify homeopathic remedies without taking the symptoms into consideration?
I don't believe, and I have tested that. I've tested people who claim they could do it. I said, okay, show me. They could not. When it comes to the real test, they fail. You see, while I was treating in Switzerland, I was treating the followers of Krishnamurti, who were a lot of the intelligentsia of the time coming from all over the world. So there was a man coming actually from South America, Costa Rica, I can't remember, a very rich man. So he had a pendulum. He said to me, I am 82 or 83 years old, and I have lived so far because of this pendulum. I said, what do you do with the pendulum? He says, I check everything, whether it's good or bad for me, with the pendulum. I said, is that true? I'm interested. So I took his case, and he said, I cannot take your remedy you will give me unless I check it with a pendulum. I said, fine. so I I said to myself, okay, I will give him placebo to see what he will say. If he will say, this is nothing for me, I will start having some doubts. So I gave him the placebo. One day I brought him, put some sugar, I gave it to him. So he checked it with the pendulum, and the next day he comes and he says, you take it back. I said, oh my God, you found out. He said, if I take this medicine, I will have such a reaction that I may not live. I said, you better don't take it, because by self-suggestion, he had heard that people who were taking my remedies, they had big aggravation. So he heard it because they talk between them, etc. And he said, maybe I will not survive if I take your remedy. So I said, okay, don't worry, give it back to me.
So the pendulum didn't work.
So the pendulum did not work. But it was several times. People claimed all these kind of things. When I tried to test, it didn't work. There was a time, another time, people like stories. Another time where a Hollander, a medical doctor, said, I have a patient who can hold one of your high potencies and can say if there is a potency or not.
Yes, I've heard that.
You know the story, okay? So you know, yes, she was not able. When we tested, we gave 10 bottles, 3 of them were potentized. In 3 efforts she made, she could not spot even one time of one of the 3 bottles that were potentized.
We see that there are many positive studies with homeopathic complexes, especially with hay fever. There are many positive studies. How do we explain to the scientific community, how do we conduct tests with homeopathy? Because I'm asking you because I have recently come across studies which you have been part of. I have with me here a study, Homeopathy for Infertility Treatment, a case series which you were part of, and it was done here in Greece. And the results have been overwhelmingly positive.
Yes.
So, and this has been published in a peer-reviewed journal, a scientific journal. How should we do research in homeopathy? How should we hold trials in homeopathy so that we are able to document the efficacy of homeopathy and the results are scientific? Results are scientific in a way which are not difficult to accept by the community, scientific community, where they cannot attribute the results of homeopathy to placebo or suggestion.
You see, first of all, in this research, whatever concerns homeopathic research, people that know homeopathy should be involved. If people, scientists in general, are involved with such an experiment, it will go wrong because they don't know the details and how they should structure an experiment like that. An experiment of that type should be first choosing a pathology which can be documented. A pathology which can be documented, what it is. It is sinusitis, for instance, where you can see with an X-ray what is going on. And once you choose this pathology, then you will have to treat a lot of patients individually. And treat them in such a way that some of them will take placebo, and some of them will take the remedy. But the homeopath does not know, treats everybody. But the computer says, number 1, you give placebo. Number 2, you give the remedy. Number 3, give the remedy. Number 4, the remedy. Number 5, placebo. Number 7, placebo, etc. So you don't know, you're treating the cases. The homeopath gives the correct remedy for each case, and in the end they open the results and they see what happened for those who took the remedy and those who took placebo. So this is a simple experiment, but in order to be organized such an experiment, you need, first of all, to have good homeopaths prescribing. You cannot say in the beginning, give calibichromicum for everyone. For everyone. You cannot say that. So that means you have to have good homeopaths prescribing. That's the first condition. The second condition is that you will have enough numbers of cases so it can be proven very clearly what are the results. And the third condition is to have enough money to organize such an experiment. Such an experiment done in a hospital where there is supervision, there are a lot of doctors involved, prescribers, etc., computers, robots that they will choose the remedy, etc., etc. It's an experiment that it may cost from 300,000 of euros to $500,000 of euros. Now, who can give this money? You see, we try to have this 1 million from Randy, you know, and we try to organize it in such a way, and I accepted to reduce the cost by asking people to do prescribing for no money, etc., and a lot of donations, etc., etc., in order to start the experiment. When Randy shows that I will not back up, he thought, if we start this experiment, George will get out. Instead of me get out, he got out. Suddenly, one day, when everything was ready to start the experiment, he wrote a letter and he said, no, I don't accept all this. We'll start from the beginning, and George has to do the experiment himself first, prove that there is a positive, and then we will repeat it together with my supervision. And I was amazed because for 5 years we were preparing this experiment, and all the time he never said, I will go out of the experiment. Now suddenly he wanted to go out of the experiment, and George did not comply with the requirements. But he had agreed from the very beginning that these are the conditions. He comes in the end, he says, but the condition is that the experiment has to be done first by somebody and then repeated by my supervision. But for 5 years, he did not say that. Anything. And for 5 years, we spent lots of money, energy, organizing, etc. And in the end, when everything is ready, you come and say, no, I don't agree. You see, we start all over again. You do the experiment first yourself. Where could I find all this money?
He probably needed an excuse to run
away.
He
needed an excuse, of course, because he felt he would lose
the money
and
the reputation.
And his reputation. He felt that the BBC, because I had requested that the BBC will be involved in the experiment. And yes, if we fail, the BBC can say they fail. But could you imagine him handing me over 1 million in front of the whole world for accepting?
I would have loved to see that.
Yeah, I would love this too, because people, a lot of people, they told me, he's an unreliable person, don't get involved with him. And a lot of people told me, I said, no. I said yes, and I will continue until the end. So that is the kind of research that I could be involved and I could give directions.